No. Okay, today going to mensural notation. Good. Now, just by chance, does anybody know what mensural notation is? And don't read this, please. I mean, if you already know. Mensural notation is the music notation system used for not. So, somebody know? Does somebody know what mensural notation is?
I didn't.
Okay, no problem. Anna, yes.
The medieval manner of notating music that's like more than one voice or something like that?
Well, the rhythmic modes we're going to see, which is textual notation, was the medieval way. But then in the Ars Nova, the measuring, yes, what we have today of this proportional, this division, yes, that that is constant of the note values, starting in Ars Nova, not before invented. Yeah, so that was that era. Yeah, of this, for example, the bar as it is today, in the 16th century. So what we have today, what we have, semi-brief that is divided into minims, and those minims are divided themselves, and quavers. That type of ratio, let's say, started. Yeah? Here we call the art. Before there was a flow, yes, and in the Gregorian chant that we saw before, remember that there were duration, they were hinted, yeah, dots or some other or ligatures, or we didn't. But yes, we the only thing that we saw was dot, num, but actually was the pitch, the first system, yes, invented with the tetragram, and the system was a little harder, it took longer. Yeah. So, according to Wikipedia, mensural notation is a musical notation system used for European vocal polyphonic music from the later part of the 13th century until about 1600. The reason why they had to come up with a new system, because the music was becoming exactly polyphonic, becoming more difficult to match. Yes, because so far, medieval times, had one line, rhythm was not very important. Match with another person that's singing, how can you measure that? That's why they had to come up with a new system. The mensural refers to the ability of this system to describe precisely measured ratios in terms of numerical proportions between note values. Modern name is inspired by the terminology of medieval theorists who used terms like musica mensurata, measured music, cantus mensurabilis, measurable song, to refer to the rhythmically defined polyphonic music of their age, opposed to plana or musica choralis, example, Gregorian plain chant. Mensural notation was employed principally for compositions in the tradition of vocal polyphony, whereas plain chant retained its own older system of num notation that we saw as squares throughout the period. So both of them remained. Yes, the num notation remained such. Now, to define the unity of measure and the grouping of values in fixed units is an achievement of the 16th century, approximately the year 1320, in the period denominated Ars Nova. If you don't know what Ars Nova is, go and check. Anyone knows what Ars Nova is? No, more or less. Go and check today. Very interesting. As Eduardo Keki states in his book Counterpoint, page 50, the notation and the concept of duration value prior to the 14th century are not isolated. Rhythmic problematics are understood in rhythmic patterns, called a rhythmic modal notation. Today, we say that the patterns contain durational values with a ternary meter, for example. The notation of these patterns are called modal notation. Now, let's go for the beginning. Yeah. Now, also, the reason why we're seeing this will come at the end, yeah? Because the way that this mensural notation deployed values is not the way that we see today, yes? And it can give you a lot of insight, rhythmic insight. You're going to see that at the end, and the result, the polyphonic result. So this process began with simple components which some scholars have suggested were initially derived from the Greek poetic meters, as always. Georgios. Everything comes from the Greeks.
It's true.
Everything. Greeks. These meters were the rhythmic modes which in their early stages of usage, secular monophony, were not notated but were understood, derived from the rhythmic patterns inherent in the text. Because there was no clearly defined notation for the rhythmic values, there were many interpretations for some pieces. This was still with the neumes. Yes, remember from the modes of which. I think it was Georgios was apart and listened to YouTube. Said, well, I didn't think exactly the rhythm that the singer was. Well, nobody knew, so don't worry. They replaced the unmeasured uniform flow with a recurring pattern of long and short notes that are known as rhythmic modes, identified with what we call modal notation. Primary forms of rhythmic modes are 6, equivalent to the Greek prosody. Although the composer Léonine was one of the main contributors to the school of Notre Dame, yes, Léonine was one of the most amazing composers. Not known now, but I'm going to check. Very long, but it was amazing. Now, basically, you have these modes in which the first one, yes, and the second and the last one, modes 1, 2. Actually, they were known as modes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, these names, hope that they have sense to get.
They are like the prosody. The poems have this system.
Yeah. I know, but the pronunciation.
Yeah, I mean, they are. I think they're through Latin and then to English. So I can see what they used to be, but now I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Yeah. I mean, what I did was give a link of the actually prosody. You want to? Yes. This one, of course, you're going to see that is very, very, very thorough. Yes, this is the actual source. Just for fun, Georgios, What's it? Can you read it?
Οικοδιός πες την δεθιδαίων χθόνα. Χθόνα. The child of the child of Zeus.
That. But what they say is that this is the rhythm.
Οικοδιός πες, long, short, long.
Yeah.
Την δεθιδαίων πες, on χθόνα. Yes.
So this is the here, long, short, long. Yes. Archaic, I don't know the pronunciation in Greek, of course, but archaic iambic is long, the square notation system. I'm not going to go into the system ligatures, yes, because it's unless you want to early, yeah, because this and then another system of ligatures meant the notes. This is we say in the process mensural notation. Yes. For now, what you should know is that the first approach of values in Greek prosody, that's thank you. They had very specific rhythms. So that it was the first, the beginning, something that helped them, yes, to find certain rhythmic patterns, not even beats, just rhythmic patterns. It was a very complex system. The shorter, the longer, and then on the context, yes, of the values. So it's a system of ligatures. I mean, if you want to find out interesting music, go ahead and do it. Yes, but what we should know is that they had these 6 modes, and then each one had very specific, say, durations. Yes, and then the first mode was most used of small routes. Yes. Then you have several, and then they have the 6th one also was one that will transform into the triple meter that we. So, in the literature of the period during which the rhythmic modes were used, modes 1 and 3 were favored, mode 2 was used less often, and mode 4 was almost never used. Mode 5 was ordinarily used only in the tenor. The tenor playing that next lesson. When they say the tenor, okay? When we start saying organum and poly, that's up. Mode 6 was widely used in organum, there you go, discussed in a later chapter, but not in the tenor. I mean, because it's not the tenor that we know today. Ars Nova, the new mensural notation. The 14th century music history is characterized as the Ars Nova new art. The name was taken from the title of composer Philippe de Vitry. This Philippe de Vitry created several treatises. One it was early harmonic one. Very important composer. It was used by theorists of the day to distinguish from the preceding period, the Ars Antiqua, this time of development, considerable refinement in both the notational system and composition practice. A new value. Yes. Now, the first thing we're going to see is that the rhythmic values were added, were invented. Yeah? A new value, the minima, yes, today minim, a diamond-shaped note with a vertical stem from the top point of diamond, introduced early in the period and was followed soon after by the semi-minima, the minima with a flat added to the top Even smaller values made their appearance later in the period, the fusta and semi-fusta. Spanish speak. It would be kind of like quaver and the semi. But these will not be discussed here, not now. Essentially, two different forms of notation, the French and the Italian, which actually the French notational systems, French state, evolved from the basic principles of the Ars Nova during the 14th century. Now, this is a book that, if you're not very interested, provide amazing book. It's everything you eat. Renaissance and medieval times. Now comes the difficult part. During the period that led to the development and use of the Ars Nova notation, there was a rather rapid dissolution of the influence of the rhythmic modes. The modes were gone. Remember that the modes was beginning. Yeah? Time values were increasingly more sharply defined and signatures began to appear, which identify the various possible evolving between the several note values and metrical patterns. This example, the one now, provides a summary of the note values being used and their respective relationships to each other. Now, these are three words that we have to see now. The terms modus, tempus, and prolatio, which appear in this example, refer to the divisions of the longa, the breve, and the semi-breve, respectively. Now, going to go to here, yes. Mensural notation distinguished between several basic metric patterns of music. Now, the longa, the breve, and the semi-breve were the longest values. So it depends on how you divide the longa, breve, and semi-breve. You have modus, the tempus, or the prolatio. Sorry. Mensural notation distinguished between several basic metric patterns of music, which were defined as combinations of ternary and binary subdivisions. Everything was binary or ternary. Yes, perfect or imperfect. So, ternary and binary subdivisions of time on successive hierarchical levels and roughly on to modern bar structures. Bar was not invented. The division of the semi-breve into minims was called prolatio. Yes, so the semi-breve into minims was called prolatio. That of the breve into semi-breve was called tempus. Remember that. Semi-breve into minims was called prolatio. The breve into semi-breves was called tempus. And the longa into the breves was as modus. So, actually, in order from longer to shorter is modus, then you have tempus, and you have prolatio. The division of the maxima into longas called maximorum or maximodus, or modus major. In the modern literature, it's also sometimes called maximodus. Each of these levels could be either perfect or imperfect, binary. The two types of prolatio were also known as major prolation and minor prolation, respectively. So everything was depending on the initial value. Had breves, semi-breves, yes, and the type of division that you have. So modus, tempus, and prolatio. If you see, you have the perfect and imperfect in each one of them. And then always the perfect is in 3, in this case the modus in 3. Remember. The division of the semi-breve into many is called prolatio. The brief into semi-briefs was tempus. The longer into briefs was modus. Let's go. And so the mensuration for the maximodus was maxima. L is from maxima. L from longa. Perfectus and imperfect. Ternary binary. One maxima into three longas. One maxima into two longas. The modus. Ternary binary. One long into three briefs. One long into two briefs. Tempus. Perfectum. One brief into three semi-briefs. One brief into two semi-briefs. Relatio. One semi-brief into three minims. One semi-brief into two minims. And then you have a lovely chart. Tempus, relatio, the sign, and this sign is actually quite interesting because it has a lot to do with some signs that we say. So you have the sign, the semi-briefs, and the minims. Let me see if you understood or not. You have the, in this case, let me see, Georgios. You have the modern version here. See the relation between.
I see, but I'm trying to find the name. So which one of the previous one would this be? Of the
This one.
Maximus.
Maximodus is when you have the longa and the maxima.
Modus tempus mons.
Exactly.
So that one would be. Show me again.
Wait, this one or this one?
That.
Ah,
so you have. So. Wait. How do these fit here?
I will go to the page. It's a very good graph. Go to mensurations. Yes, this is mensurals. Yes, look. See what the perfect modus and the maximodus became rare by after the 14th century. Of most practical importance were the subdivision and work. By the time rather than the function of the unit, the four possible combinations of tempus relatio could be signaled by mensuration signs at the beginning of a composition. This was kind of our time signature. Kind of, not the same, okay?
Sí.
A circle for tempus perfectum, a semicircle, a semicircle for tempus imperfect, each combined with a dot for prolatio major or no dot for prolatio minor. This corresponds to modern measures 9/8 because each one of the beats divided by 3. Have 3 beats divided by 3. I mean, in modern times, I'm trying to relate this to modern times. It's not the same. Not the same. And we're going to see in the examples why it's not the same. Yes? 3, 4, or 6, 8, and 2, 4 respectively, assuming the reduction factor. Now, this became quite, quite intricate, because this is just the beginning, as always. So we have the so-called cat signs, yes, indicate a reduction of all temporal values by a factor of 2. This sign and these signs are the source of the common time. La breve, his signature. And why? Look, 4 to 2. This is the perfecto first semicircle. Huh?
Let me understand though.
Look,
What did the line do?
The line, look, you know what? So you have, no, there's a video that's going to see at the beginning because I think it's minute 6:29. There's the guy in internet, the specialist, and they're doing these amazing videos in which they explain amazingly well. Yes, minute 6:29. Let's see it. Let's go for this one, and then
my name is Ramotem.
there you go. This is a genius. Amazing, really. So let's see if we can try to understand.
F note contains two quarter notes, absolute values, that is, equivalent to modern notation.
Now, this is a system of ligatures that we are not going to see. Okay? Just saying. You want to see it? I either look at the rest of the video or look, because there's no point. Yes? So let's take a look about to this, and then let's see if the chart has more sense. Okay?
This, however, is very far from the truth. Modern notation, which is in fact not so different from the notation that was used already in the 17th century, has absolute values. That is, a whole note, for example, contains two half notes, and a half note contains two quarter notes. In the old mensural system, however, things were more elaborate. Each note value could be either perfect, that is, ternary, made out of three parts, or imperfect, binary, made out of two parts. The first two levels, at the values of the maxima and of the long, were sometimes called maximodus and modus, and could be either perfect or imperfect. However, from the end of the 14th century, they were mostly considered imperfect by default, containing only two smaller note values. The next two levels, though, those of the breves and semibreves, were very much the center of attention, and especially so in the 15th century. These were called tempus and prolatio. In order to mark whether these notes were perfect or imperfect at the beginning of each piece, a simple representation method was devised. The tempus was marked with a circle. If it were complete, it meant that it was perfect, that is, each breve was made up of three semibreves. And if it were incomplete, a half circle, it was imperfect, made of only two semibreves. Then the prolatio, if it were perfect, was marked with a dot, and it meant that the semibreve was made of three minims. The absence of a dot meant that the prolatio was imperfect, with only two minims in each semibreve. Thus, as can be seen in this diagram from Pietro Aron's treatise from 1523, four central mensurations were established, each with its own sign. Circle with a dot, perfect tempus with perfect prolatio, half a circle with a dot, imperfect tempus with perfect prolatio, circle with no dot, perfect tempus with imperfect prolatio, and lastly, half a circle with no dot, imperfect tempus with imperfect prolatio. It should be said that these four mensurations were mostly used in the 15th century. By the 16th century, although they are still mentioned in almost all the treatises, they were seldom used in actual music. Notice, however, the last mensuration and its C sign, where everything is imperfect. Out of these four, it was the only one used throughout the 16th century. In fact, this mensuration is the basis of the modern notation system as you know it. It is not by chance that it was later termed common time. So these are the basic.
Clearer?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. But the line,
There's a butt coming.
that line that makes it what
Yes.
we have now 2-2, what did it do exactly?
Well, I will go to the. Yes, good. Very amazing. Yes. Amazing question.
Opa.
Whoa, wait, 13. Because I will give you an example of actually how this music works. Yeah, because so far it has been, I understand really that it has been a little bit confusing. And you don't see actually miraculous. Yes. The genius part comes now. Yes. Now, this became, in this century, very complicated. Yes. And it was mathematically proportional. Yes. So, let's see how this applied. And let's see if we can understand a little bit more. Yes.
As opposed to modern notation, where a single time signature is mostly used for all the voices, in mensural notation, it is quite common that each voice has a different mensuration.
Did you listen? Each voice, and this is interesting part, and this is something that you can use in your compositions. Yes, each voice had a different proportion.
Moreover, it is also possible to indicate that certain parts should be executed according to a certain proportion. Twice as fast, twice as slow, and also 3 times as fast or slow. In fact, any conceivable mathematical proportion was theoretically possible. This made the system extremely complicated and filled theory books with countless signs and incomprehensible tables. At the same time, it also offered composers the opportunity to show off their genius. By applying different mensurations and proportions to a single clever melody, different parts are created. This was called a mensural canon. This, for example, is a little duet from Josquin's Misa lo marmé super voces musicales. A más
Now, guys, one thing. Do you know what is a canon?
Yes.
What is a canon?
Yeah.
It is.
Well, I mean, when we have this voice starting with a melody, and then voices are doing the same melody, but in different moments, different time.
Okay.
I don't know really how to.
So you have a melody that is repeated either actually at the unison or any interval possible. Yes, at a constant, let's say, constant distance of time. Yes, can be a minimum away, a quarter away. I mean, approach it away from the initial melody. Now, in this case, what they started to do is to do canons with different mensurations. So one voice was subdivided by 3, the other voice was subdivided by 2. Yes, if you see Georgios, this is very, very similar to the alla breve. Yes, and different voices were in different clefs as well. Yeah. Let's see this. And Josquin de Prez was one of the most important composers of his time, by the way. And this Misa l'homme armé is one of the most famous ones he composed.
full of such mensural tricks. You see that there is only one part, but 2 mensural signs. The upper one we presented above, imperfect tempus with imperfect prolatio, the mensural sign that was later named common time. The lower one is the same but with a stroke through it. This sign was later called alla breve. We mentioned the significance of these signs in another episode. In this specific context, the stroke means that all the note values are diminished by half. So by composing one line of music, there are in fact two voices, one sung as it is, and one that is twice as fast.
Understood, Georgios?
Yes.
Came from here, so old. Now let's hear it. Very interesting.
Jacob will join me and will sing it for you. The Agnus Dei from the same Mass is even more elaborate, with three voices, one normal, one double speed, and one triple speed. The starting note of each voice is not clear from this part alone, but Glarean, in his famous 1547 treatise, solved this for us. The top part should start on a D, the middle one on the A below it, and the lowest one on the D below. So that you may appreciate exactly how it works, I will let the computer play it. It seems as if the ternary and binary divisions create a weird effect,
I love
one which we do not often hear. Some composers took the same idea even further, and the results are no less weird. Check the details in the footnotes if you wish.
Yeah, this will become even worse. But basically, it was a system, yes, that led, yes, into writing. I mean, there's one explanation I heard about why would this happen. Although mathematics will become very important, yes, in the Renaissance. Paper, yeah, was very expensive. To write music was extremely expensive. So instead of writing all the parts, they would just use this. So in one page you have the whole piece. I heard that, explanation is not crazy. But this led into what comes the most fun part of the lesson, at least for me. So basically what I would like you to explore, yeah, is the idea of, this is a good example, different proportions in different parts of your piece, yeah, because we are a little bit enslaved by the idea of time signatures, yeah. And polyrhythm is something that at the beginning of the 20th century composers started to explore, but from here they were not very original. Actually, they from Renaissance, yes. So it will, I think, it will give you a kind of interesting idea to ponder, at least to have in consideration. At least they know that this exists and you can use it. Of course, you're not going to use it in this under these terms, yeah? But you could explore the possibility. Let's listen. It's very long. It was 1530 canon, but yeah. Now, sorry, before we listen to it, you have this cantus, which is this cantus. melody, contra tenor, tenor, and passus. And this was the actual music sheet. This was the result. We're not going to listen to everything. I'm going to give you the links. Yeah, and you can see the different relatio. And this gets a little bit more complicated. There you go. So basically this is the music sheet. You have the different relatio, the different clefs, yes, that applies to the voices, and this is actual the different 5 voices that we have. Yeah. So you have the breve, yes. By 3, you have the breve containing 2, you have the breve containing 3, breve containing 2, and then breve containing 3. Now, you might think this is, oh my God, either impossible to write, or there's no point, or mathematically, but I don't know how to apply it, or should I apply it in all the pieces? No, it's just another resource, yes, into account. Because if you listen to the results, and this is the most important thing, it's beautiful. Yes, it's not a rational thing that just stays on paper. Yeah, look. Okay. What did you think about this rhythmic complexity that we have here?
Very complex.
It's very complex, exactly. And one of the things that I would like to add, because we think that now, music got really super complex, tonal system. Okay, look at this. Rhythmically, they were far
How did
off.
they count this?
Oh, this is very difficult. I mean, people that's why I try to give you an idea, yes, of what mensural notation is. I'm skipping a lot of things, yes, because the idea for you not to become a specialist, but to have a grasp, an idea of what you can do actually. Yes, rhythmically, it's unbelievable, and the results beautiful, because let's be honest, a lot of contemporary music took the same thing, and the result is not that. Yes, beauty was not one of the main in contemporary music. Yes, but the rhythmic complexity that you can achieve by proportions, yes, even measured in modern times. You're not going to measure it like in a prolazio, not anymore. Yes, nobody will understand this. But this is another example of something that is notated, yes, modernly. That is a riddle. It's a prolation or prolation canon for 3 voices by Johannes Cicogna. This piece is a unique example of irregular prolation or prolation from the French art in 4-3-1 proportion. 4-3-1 proportion. This piece creates an interesting rhythmic phrasing effect between the triplum and the cantus, top 2 voices. Nearly 1600 years before the 20th century composer Steve Reich popularized such musical texture. Yes, because when the credit is due, yeah, I think that we have to do it. All these people were thinking this a long time ago. Yeah? So basically, it's a riddle, okay? And this is what became very, very common in this era. A musical riddle. Sorry, I will stop there because on parenthetically note it is suggested that rest according to the written instruction found in the manuscript and due to the non-idiomatic harmonies notes generates. Yes, I will stop whenever it has something to read. Look at the notes. It might help how they're divided. The original melody is augmented so that the 3 beats in the cantus spans 4 beats in the triplum. Alternatively, while the cantus signs 3 perfect minims, quarter note triplets, the triplum signs 4 imperfect minims, 4 eighth notes. See that they have the same A, F, D, F, D. The third one, an octave below, makes wide delays the original melody transposed down an octave and augmented. This was actually the interesting part. Yeah? There you go. Listen to the percussion. is actually the page. So you just have this, and you have to figure out how to play it.
Very pretty. Very nice.
Very pretty, very nice. What do you, when you listen to
Thank
this
God,
music?
thank God the percussion was there. Otherwise, I'm not sure if I could follow.
Exactly. That's why I
Yeah.
say listen to the percussion. Listen to the
Yeah, yeah.
percussion. If not, it's like, where am I? But even the percussion, I don't know, Georgios, have you noticed something particular about the percussion?
Oh, what it was counting, I'm not sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, this I don't expect to understand, because it's very difficult. You have to have your head around this. We are not used to this complexity. We think that we have very complex music. We are, say iPads and whatever. This music is very complex. The rhythm is very complex. But it's very. That's why I said discussion, because that is very not. It's regular, but you have to find out how regular it is. It's not the regular 4/4 that we know today. And they have rhythmically, they have, amazing things, amazing. There is another one, the last one. Let me see. This one. Oh yes. So this is just brain candy. Yes. Just this is an animation. Yes. Of there you go. Of another riddle. And music. I was talking to this to Georgios, but music was written like this. Yeah. Anybody new?
No, but why? I mean,
So this, yes, it was the way. But it's good. I think this is it's interesting to see that we have a very linear thinking today, and they didn't, because this is expression of what the people thought in a period of time. Yeah. So they have a very more like natural oriented, cyclical. Yeah. So each one of the voices, I'm not going to go a lot into that, yet each one of the voices has one clef, each one of the voices has one prolapsio. This is the last thing we're going to listen to, because I think that's Gisela. Yeah? Now this is a mention, yes. The canonic ballad of the labyrinth, yeah, in La Maison Dédalus. This has even the lyrics have to do with the song. Amazingly enough, I don't have any. With the canonic, although it's very interesting. But in La Maison Dédalus, yes, you have the text in Labyrinth Cantus, top circle, outer ring, line, in La Maison Dédalus Enfermé, French. So this is each one of the voices, top of circle, outer ring, line, top, bottom, top left circle, and each one lyrics. And is something that actually it has a form. So even is we call it a form fixed, and this starts. This is part of what we call today form AAB refrain, AAB refrain. They started with this, yeah. This and everything started with this type of notation that gave form to music. They didn't have form. They didn't have that notion. With these portions, at the beginning, this yeah, through this system, yeah, because how to get a listen to this music, very interesting. Try to, because it has different. It's truly polyrhythmic, truly polyrhythmic. Yeah? Next lesson we're going to of early polyphony in this cantus. Yes,